The Manufacturing Edge, where ops leaders break barriers, drive growth, and redefine what's possible.
Welcome to the Manufacturing Edge. I'm your host, Daniel Bobick, and today we're tackling a topic that has been a game changer in manufacturing for decades, and that is lean manufacturing. Lean has been a powerful approach to identifying and eliminating waste, driving efficiency, and maximizing value for those that implement its tools and techniques. As organizations have had to adapt to economic shifts, technological advances, and evolving business priorities, its popularity has ebbed and flowed over the years. So, where does the concept of lean manufacturing stand today? Why are we seeing a renewed interest in it as a tool for growth? And how can manufacturers integrate modern technologies like AI, automation, and IoT while staying true to lean's core principles? To help me unpack these critical questions, I'm joined by Bill Remy, CEO of TBM Consulting Group. Bill has decades of experience leading operational transformations and driving performance improvements across global manufacturing organizations, and has seen firsthand the impact of lean within organizations, how it has evolved, and most importantly, where it is headed next. Bill, welcome to the Manufacturing Edge. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Daniel. Glad to be here.
And as an Oklahoma State guy, right, another Oklahoma State graduate, it's always great to talk to another Cowboy. So go Pokes.
That's right. Go Pokes.
Go Pokes. Well, so jumping right into it, Bill, in its simplest terms, I know there's a lot of talk around lean, and there might be maybe some confusion around it. If you could just kind of set the level set with us, what is, in its simplest terms, what is lean manufacturing, and why is it still relevant today?
Well, as you think about how it's evolved and how it was originally developed, it's just a mix of the principles that have been developed over time that go as far back as Henry Ford, Frederick Taylor, Deming's work post World War II, and Duran and others. It's a comprehensive, systematic approach to managing, operating, and continuous improving your operations in your business. It's not really even limited to just operations. People often think of it around only manufacturing, and it's really not. You can apply the principles and use the methodologies in really any business, any type of business. As we've seen, right? Some people do it really well, others not as good. A lot of that has to do with how you develop your understanding of it, how it can be integrated into your business, right? How it can help you manage better, serve customers better, and drive growth for the business.
So with that said, what are some of the best practices? What have you seen for organizations that have done it really well? What do they seem to do?
I think if you look at the ones that do it really well, they embrace it as a way of operating the business. They weave it into the culture, weave it into the daily operating and managing of the business. And it becomes just what we do. It's not something else. It's not an initiative. It's not a program. It's something that we adopt over time as a way of truly running the business. And it spans all the way from the C-suite to the front lines points of impact. It's how we lead, how we engage with the team, how we problem solve, and how we think about just driving value for not only the business, the stakeholders, but customers. It really is understanding it as a true shift in running a business, as opposed to, well, we're going to do this program and we're going to do lean. That's not the right way to think about it.
So in other words, it's part of your identity and who you are and how you operate. It's not just necessarily a flash in the pan or something that you do for a couple months or a year, and then all of a sudden you kind of move on to the next best thing.
Yeah, I have truly heard people tell me, oh, we did lean last quarter, we're ready to move on. And it's like, no, you didn't. That's not how it works. You won't be successful with that type of an approach.
How long have you been practicing lean and been working with organizations yourself, Bill? I know we've talked a little bit about decades, but can you kind of just give us a little bit of background on what you've done in the lean and how you've seen it evolve, where it's been and where it's evolved, and where you think it's continuing to go?
My early days, it's been about 32 years that I've been involved in this type of work. And it really started when I was in the turbine engine business with Allied Signal Engine. I led half of the factory transformation in that business in our propulsion engine division. And part of that transformation was we did it in the early 90s. And honestly, this was just when things were emerging. It was just right around the time TBM was even formed. And the idea of lean was really emerging from thinking around the machine that changed the world, lean thinking, those types of early publications, and in just engaging. It's like, so what does this mean for us? How do we think about this in our business? In those early days, the revelations we had, which today I believe are absolutely still relevant, is our core premise was focus on reducing lead time, create speed, with the idea that if you focus on what's it take to reduce lead time, then you see all of the speed bumps, the barriers, the waste, if you will, that's causing you to have longer lead times. It's longer setup times, it's quality problems, it's too much movement and handling, it's too much movement by operators, right? It's going to hunt for things, it's lack of standard work, and it's not measuring your performance at the point of impact on a daily, hourly basis. And those are the things we learned early on, the very core tenets. It's workplace organization. How do we know what's a normal condition? When you just walk into a production area or an area of a business, how do I know this is normal? So do I know where everything's where it's supposed to be? Do I know it's operating normally, or do we have problems? In making those things evident and bringing them to the surface is really the learnings at a foundational level that we understood at that time. And then as my career progressed and I came to know TBM and worked with them, and the thoughts became more robust. TBM had built it out even more and thinking about how you go to the next level. And I think it's a constant learning cycle. What you have to keep in mind are the core principles always apply, the ideas of removing waste, the ideas of identifying normal from abnormal, of having standard work so you can measure normal from abnormal are absolutely critical. And if you can't do that, then you can't do any of the other things.
Very good. And to back that up, I have some statistics here that in the Forbes article, it said that lean practices reduce manufacturing costs by 15 to 25%. Another one is McKinsey said that production efficiency improves by 30% with lean methodologies. And another one by Gartner says defect rates reduced by 40% with lean quality management. To me, it sounds like it's a no-brainer. So why doesn't everybody just go and implement this? Why isn't this kind of a best practice or something that everybody's doing?
Well, partly because it's just hard. It's hard work, and the principles are really easy to understand. They really are. It's straightforward. People can grasp it readily. But then going into the factory or going into the work environment and saying, well, how do I implement this? Where do I start? How do I implement? And how do I keep building and developing it is where the hard happens, because it's not a one size fits all playbook. You can't say, okay, do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now you've got it. It's constantly changing in the environment because businesses, especially manufacturing businesses, are always changing, right? All businesses are, really, for that matter. They're constantly changing. And so everything's moving on you. And now you're trying to implement this different way of doing things. And one of the bigger challenges is the change management with people, because you have to engage everyone, which means you have to get everybody's buy-in, and not just their intellectual buy-in. You have to get their gut level buy-in, that they emotionally and at a gut level, yeah, this makes sense. This works. I'm in. And that takes time, because that whole change process for people can take a lot of time. You have to build that into your thinking. But the other thing that happens is you have people changes, right? People come and go, organizations change, and so your landscape is constantly moving on you. And honestly, the bigger the organization gets, the bigger the challenge that is. And it's also when you add new people, they come in with a different view or different experiences, and so now you have to bring them in alignment with how you're doing things, and that just takes time, and it just takes a ton of effort. And it's much more akin to running an ultra marathon than it is a sprint. You have to get your mind prepared for the really long haul of what it's going to take to do this. And in the constant nurturing, the nurturing, the development, it just never goes away. I think On the flip side, what you have, and this is one of my pet peeves, when we go back to COVID, there were people that were writing articles that said lean is what caused the whole toilet paper shortage because everybody leaned all this out and we couldn't get enough toilet paper, as an example, right? It's because I know there was tons of paper goods hoarding going on, right? There is no production capability in the world that can anticipate or fulfill those kinds of just crazy surges in demand in that short of a time window. And you can't carry enough inventory to ever buffer that. Things like those events, you can't predict. Pandemics don't come around that often, right? And so to think that, oh yeah, if we hadn't done lean, we could have better planned for that. Well, that's just frankly not true. What lean does do, the other piece that it does, because of that focus on lead time, waste removal, it creates an agility and a responsiveness in the business that you can now respond to markets. You can now shift between different products and different mixes faster than your competitors. That's the key, is to be faster than your competitors. If you're faster than competitors, you have a much better chance of staying with your customers and fulfilling them than the other guys, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the speed piece. I mean, I think it's, I'm big into sports and I like sports analogies. And I mean, what are they? Speed kills. I mean, you have to have speed. The guys that typically are the quickest. I mean, you can't guard that or you can't cover that, so to speak, right? So having that agility and having that speed from an organizational standpoint is crucial to surviving. So I guess what that question is as we look towards more U.S. or onshoring or nearshoring, what are your thoughts around organizations, U.S. manufacturers in particular? What advantages might they have? How do you see them implementing lean and becoming basically having a competitive advantage to those companies and those organizations that decide not to do it or to wait?
I think depending on what your business is, it's still going to at times be hard to overcome the labor components of lower cost countries, right? Say perhaps just even Mexico versus the US. That's not to say you can't, but you're going to have to be really creative. And you can. It may involve using more automation. It may involve certain technology that can make you more productive and be a force multiplier. But at the same token, automation's not a silver bullet, is not the end all. So you have to be really smart about where you implement it and the flexibility in that automation to adapt to shifting markets, shifting changes in your product mix or product variation, right? Because automation tends to be fixed capex. It's not easily reconfigurable like people are, right? People are the most flexible element you can have in your factory because we can think independently, we can work independently, and we can shift to accommodate changing priorities. That's harder to do with some automation. But at the same time, automation is brilliant in the more repetitive things, the dangerous things, or environments where you just don't want people, right? Or they can be force multipliers for people. So automation, lean doesn't preclude automation, but what you would be wise to do is if you believe that you can leverage technology to really clean up the process first. That if you have a process with defects or that doesn't have standards, is not repeatable, get that right. Get it very repeatable, clean it up, take out all the waste, and then if it makes sense, then think about how do you use technology to automate that in some fashion, right? Either actual automation in a factory or information automation, transactional automation to streamline things and let people be more productive in other elements. But you got to clean up the process first. All the things we've said over the years. There's an old saying like garbage in, garbage out, and that comes from the IT world, and it's true in the factory world too. Look, if you try to automate a process that's full of waste and noise and defects and problems, you're not going to be very successful. You're going to be really disappointed in the result, and you're going to spend a lot of money before you figure it out.
So if I'm hearing you right, it sounds to me like understanding the process, identifying the waste and eliminating the waste is first. And then the next piece is coming behind it. And then the automate and just look at places where you can automate, because if you automate without it's crawl, walk, run.
Yep.
And this is kind of that process, if you will. You can't go from A to B or A to C. You got to go A, B, C. And that's in understanding where the waste is and eliminating it is the first key to that.
It is, and I like that. I like that you brought that crawl, walk, run up, because that's, I mean, philosophically, that's even how we operate when we're thinking of the technology we're using, things we're doing with clients in that space. It is very much a crawl, walk, run approach, because the crawl piece is, let's understand the process, let's get it right, let's remove the waste, let's get it repeatable, and now we can go to the next level and the next level. And because there's usually too many unknowns, and I've seen it in automation projects, both what I would call hard automation, factory type automation, as well as information automation. And the information side is almost, perhaps in some respects, is more dangerous because it's not as visible if things are going wrong. If you're feeding garbage into the system with erroneous data, bad data, things like that, it may be a while before you see some of the negative outcomes or you detect a problem. If you have, let's say, a welding robot in an area, if it's not working properly or you've not configured a fixture right or something, you'll figure it out pretty quick. The robot will crash, or you'll see a problem with the product and so on. But in the information side, it could be a little harder to see and a little more treacherous before you find the problems. And by then, the problem is typically much bigger.
Yeah. What role do you see AI playing in that modern lean manufacturing?
That's a great question. One of the bigger problems with anything new, including lean, frankly, what's caused some of the issues is the shiny penny syndrome, right? And we get, people were on the lean path, and the shiny penny comes along, and it's like, oh no, we're not going to do lean, we're going to do Six Sigma now. And then something else comes along, it's like, oh no, we're not doing that, we're doing this. That never gives you a chance to fully implement. When you think of AI, the world is hammering that nail like crazy. I bet I get 15 emails a day from people trying to engage us in, hey, we can do this for you with our AI tool. Hey, we can do this with your AI tool. And a little bit of what you have is people with answers looking for a problem. And that's just the wrong way to think about it. You absolutely, that's the old cart before the horse, right? It doesn't work. You've got to think about your business and say, what key issues do I need to solve, or what capabilities do I need to create to grow the business and to better serve customers, or to better develop my team, or to better execute, right? And if you can be crystal clear about what those are, then you can go into the crawl, walk, run mode and say, well, look, let's start with some basic analytics, right? Let's start with, what do we even have for data today? There was a Rockwell Automation study that we've looked at that said less than 38% of companies under a certain size use their data effectively. Our experience at TBM, it's probably even lower than that. You can't apply AI with garbage data, or with data that's messy, noisy, and not well understood, right? AI will not magically solve those problems. When you feed it, it's back to the garbage in, garbage out. When I feed it a lot of noise, it won't be as effective, right? And so you have to start with that crawl, walk, run. So it's like, look, let's start with some basic analytics. Let's move into some streamlining, some potential transactional automation where it makes sense to eliminate that after we've improved the process. And then we can think about where AI can help us. The other thing, though, that AI will not replace is domain expertise. So domain expertise is crucial in many industries, because you've got people, engineers, production folks that have worked in that industry for decades, and they know how things work. They know the underlying principles of the products and functionality. AI you can't train it enough to know what those people know in 30 years, right? So you can use AI as a force multiplier to help them work with data, good data, to get the potential answers and solutions quicker, but not the absolute one, right? I was reading an article about AI in the medical space. The medical world is taken two different approaches. In some cases, they've said, no, you need to follow exactly what the AI tool is telling you.
Disregard any of the experience that you have, just that this is what AI says and this is what we're going to do.
Yep. And in the other case, they're saying, well, look, use it as input to help your decision making and guide you there faster with the patient. And there was a very specific example they showed, or they talked about, in interviewing a nurse who was working in a critical care ICU environment with very ill people, people in really tough spots. She was extremely competent, right? Tons amount of domain expertise. And the AI said, based on what we're reading from the patient's symptoms and their vital signs and so on, here's what's wrong. Do this. And she looked at it and go, absolutely not. It was telling her the patient was septic, and she said, that patient is not septic. I am looking at him. I've seen septic patients. No, that is not the case. And she did something different, but she used it to eliminate. It's like, no, that's not it. And she did the right thing with the patient. And I don't know about you, but if I were in that situation, I really want that, I want the nurse to take the input, but I really want her to use her judgment that's been developed over 30 or 35 years about how to take care of me, right? Because I'm going to trust that. Because again, AI can get there. It isn't there yet to be able to give you a comprehensive view of those things. And so to completely ignore domain expertise is a recipe for a bad mistake, in my opinion, at this point. That crawl, walk, run will save you every time. Every time. You can't go too fast. This is one where you have to be a little more plodding, methodical, and really think about it.
Well, I'm trying to put myself in my listeners' shoes, our listeners' shoes, and we're sitting here and we're listening. And if I'm a leader in operations or in supply chain or continuous improvement, and I'm looking at this and I'm excited about this lean transformation. Is this something that can be done internally, or if I'm them, do I need somebody that to help me out with this? Because I know you mentioned earlier on that it was something that was can be daunting, could be challenging or difficult. What's the advantages of doing it yourself versus asking somebody to come in and help as a to use your word, a force multiplier?
Well, I mean, obviously we're a consultancy. We would love for everyone to call and ask us for help. I think you can find talent that can help you, that you can hire. You can develop your own talent. Sometimes the challenge with leveraging internal resources is just their historical experience, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a case where having either people that come from outside your industry or a consultant or somebody that brings a breadth of perspective in thinking about how to do this in an environment that isn't just like yours, but has perhaps done it in other places, because it's so principle driven that they can make it work. They don't have to be an industry insider. If they're sharp and they understand the principles and how to apply principles and the methodologies in the context of that business and can learn that, they can be successful, right? So you don't always, but good chance you will need to go find some extra people outside your organization. Yeah. And I think that's wise, right? Because when we think, when we think of diversity in a different dimension, of diversity of thought, diversity of experience and backgrounds, if you're only looking at people that have been in the organization for a long time, you lack that diversity. So sprinkling in some outside eyes to be part, or to be either conditionally part of the team or permanently part of the team, can help you with a more robust approach and get there faster. Not in the beginning though. It will take some time to say, well, let's say you're in the food and beverage industry, you're a food and bev company. You say, well, why would I hire an automotive guy? What the heck do they know about making cookies? I love to eat them, but
they're good.
Beyond that, I don't know how to make them. That's not the point. And because too oftentimes, and this is the barrier, people don't look at their business from a process perspective. They're not thinking about it as the processes that actually make the business run. Everything in a business is a process. Whether you fully understand it, whether you recognize it as a process, there is a process there. It might be very informal. It might be completely undocumented. But there's a process by which everything happens in the business every day. And if you think about it from a process view, that's where you can use outside people to help you get there, whether you hire them temporarily or permanently, because process thinkers will inherently learn how to bring that to bear, right? They don't differentiate. They don't say, well, yeah, I only know how to do this in the context of making a car. Well, that's not helpful. You need to be, and frankly, that's where sometimes, selfishly and self-promotingly, we would say, as we as consultants, because we work across so many industries, we're inherently process thinkers, right? We have to be successful.
Sure.
So it's not,
Sure.
oh yeah, now we may use stories in it from different industries, but it's about the process, right?
Sure. So parting thoughts and last questions, Bill, as we part here. What advice would you give manufacturing leaders about leveraging lean methodologies in a modern world?
Let me perhaps answer that in two ways. I think if you believe you've implemented a lean management culture, lean philosophy in your business, regardless of where you think it's at, I would go back and take a really hard look at, how effective is it? The kinds of question I was asked is, so, well, how much have we reduced our lead times to our customers overall? How much have we improved our on time in full delivery? How much have we grown the business? How much capacity have I freed up because of lean or because of the improvements I've made in reduced lead times and productivity gains that I can now use that as a sales growth weapon to go out and sell that capacity? Because while some of the previous things you quoted talked about, cost reductions, sure, productivity gains, I would couch it in terms of productivity. Those are brilliant. We love those. But what you need to think about is if I free up capacity and by creating productivity and reduced lead times, better quality, how can I sell that? How can I now turn that around and go sell that, make it a sales problem? Guys, you got to go sell more of this stuff. Or how do we introduce new products faster to leverage that capability and capacity we've created, right? Where can we go win?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you're really successful. If you haven't done much or haven't even started that journey, I would start in the same place. If you could reduce your lead times, if you improved your performance to on time and full to your customers, if you improved customer quality and or got this much internal productivity, what would that do for your business beyond letting it just fall to the financial statements? How can I grow? How can I then go leverage that into growth and performance of the business? Because that's what it's really about at the end of the day. It's really not about cost cutting. That was not where the original Japanese thinking of development was. It's not how we think about it. Absolutely sure you get better costs. That's what productivity is. But the real money comes when you sell it. Because because that incremental sales, the incremental volume coming through in that much more productive facility, it falls through at much better margins.
Sure. Bill, we appreciate your time. That's a wrap for this episode of the Manufacturing Edge. Again, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your expertise on lean's evolutions, its challenges, and as well as importantly, the future in our digital age. Again, one key takeaway is that lean isn't just about cutting costs. It's a strategic enabler for growth and agility. As technology advances, companies that blend innovation and lean principles will stay ahead. Don't forget to follow our company page on LinkedIn at TBM Consulting Group and now on Spotify.